Okay, now that we're technically all here. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback here. I don't know what's happening. My apologies, everyone. I'll just move on.
And I'm getting the French translation on the floor.
Pardon me?
I'm getting the French translation on the floor.
Hmm. Okay.
Wait, pardon, Mr.
I think
Gibo. Can I just ask what on your Zoom are you on?
Welcome. The stop-start session for today. Welcome, Minister. Just want to start this by describing to everyone who's watching or listening to us publicly, pursuant to Standing Order 81.4 and the Order of Reference of Wednesday, September 30th, 2020, the committee will now consider the main estimates for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2021, and pursuant to Standing Order 81.5 and the Order of Reference Thursday, October 22nd, 2020, the committee will now also consider the supplementary estimates B for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2021. So, and now I want to call upon the Minister for testimony. Mr. Minister, now we normally give around 5 to 10 minutes, but I understand you've prepared some remarks. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, thank you for inviting me here today. I'm joining you from Montreal on the traditional territory of the Mohawks and other Anishinaabe peoples. With me are Hélène Laurando, Deputy Minister of Canadian Heritage, and Jean-Stéphane Piché, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister of Cultural Affairs. I want to thank them for their outstanding work in the current circumstances. The COVID-19 pandemic is affecting all of us. Its impact on our country is significant in every part of our society. The Department of Canadian Heritage supports the commitments of the Government of Canada, grows the country's cultural and creative industries, and shares Canada's stories both at home and around the world. As you will recall, the 2020-2021 main estimates were tabled in Parliament last February 27th. The total funding allocated to my department was $1.5 billion, including $1.3 billion in grants and contributions and $203.2 million in operating expenses. Heritage portfolio organizations received $2.1 billion in funding. In early March, we all entered a period of uncertainty. The pandemic hit the cultural, heritage, and sports sectors hard. Following the Prime Minister's announcement in April, a $500 million emergency support fund to provide temporary assistance to these sectors, I announced further details of this funding on May 8, June 18th, and July 7th. A survey conducted by Canadian Heritage on the recipients of the first phase of the fund's implementation showed that we met our objectives, both in terms of supporting business continuity and jobs. With a 56% response rate, we obtained a wealth of information. For example, 77% of respondents indicated that the fund helped them a great deal or moderately to stay in business, and the vast majority of responses, 98%, expressed satisfaction with the speed with which they received the funds. In rolling out this emergency support fund in record time, designing all the supplementary measures that went into effect this summer, and in doing so while the department was operating at limited capacity on a business continuity plan, we relied upon our network of dozens of portfolio organizations, thousands of partner organizations, and tens of thousands of stakeholders. All of these partners contribute to the cultural, heritage, and sports sectors, which together comprise almost $62 billion of our GDP, contributes 750,000 jobs to the country, and provide us all company comfort, community, and identity in moments like these. Their work demonstrates the power of art, sport, music, literature, and the simple power of telling stories, our stories, in myriad ways. Since the spring, I have been in close contact with these sectors, which have suffered income losses, job losses, and structural changes because of health measures. To give you an idea of the extent of these losses, according to Statistics Canada, the GDP in the information and cultural industry subsector declined by about $3 billion in July compared to February of this year. Similarly, the GDP in the arts, entertainment, and recreation subsector fell by more than 50% in just 4 months. While this picture is incomplete, it does reveal some vulnerable sectors. This is why I participated in a series of town halls and roundtables to hear from stakeholders so they could share their ideas about how we can work with them to better support them. Roughly 4,000 participants attended these town halls and roundtables in September and October. These discussions allowed me to target our assistance more precisely. For example, in September, I announced a 50 million short-term compensation fund to help our film and audiovisual industry resume production activities. The fund will be administered by Telefilm Canada. Our various assistance measures are reflected in the 2020-2021 Supplementary Estimates B. This increase in appropriations for Canadian Heritage and its portfolio organizations have made several things possible, including the following: the implementation of the Emergency Support Fund that I mentioned previously, support for students and youth affected by the pandemic, support for the 6 national museums and the National Battlefields Commission, support for several key cultural organizations such as National Arts Centre and Telefilm Canada, and finally, financial relief for broadcasters through a waiver of CRTC license fees. Mr. Chair, Canada's cultural offering is among the best in the world, and I am pleased that our government is supporting it during this critical period. On Tuesday, I introduced Bill C-10 to amend the Broadcasting Act. This is an important first step in modernizing the Canadian broadcasting system. I also intend to propose more measures to put in place a regulatory framework in which digital platforms contribute their fair share. We are following developments in France, which has enacted a neighboring right for newspaper publishers into domestic laws. We are also following the situation in Australia and are examining options here in Canada. In addition, I want to introduce a bill proposing new regulations for social media platforms, starting with a requirement that all platforms remove illegal content, including hate speech. Finally, I am committed to reviewing the Copyright Act. I would also like to reiterate that our government has made of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples a priority. That is why, despite the circumstances, we are continuing to implement the Indigenous Languages Act in cooperation with our Indigenous partners and to support their projects to reclaim, revitalize, maintain, and strengthen their languages. Indigenous cultures, arts, heritage, and sport are among our key priorities, and we continue to support them. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm ready to take your questions.
Thank you, Minister. Something that we're now, before we start the general discussion, for the sake of technicalities, I will now call vote 1 under Canada Council for the Arts and vote 1B under the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, which will permit general discussion of the estimates and questioning of our witnesses. Therefore, we start with Mr. Reyes pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
You have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, to allow me to ask questions to the Minister. Thank you, Minister, for being here despite your busy schedule. You've mentioned that you wanted to talk about a new bill on the Broadcasting Act. My questions will be on this part. You want to ensure that digital media would be governed similarly to conventional media. The conventional media gives a certain part of its income to the Canadian Broadcasters Fund. It depends on the type of business, the level of investment in a certain market. We're talking about 5%, right? That's what we hear everywhere. That's what's brought forward normally. Can you confirm that? I see that your deputy ministers seem to agree. Your question is on the media fund. There are many investments. I'm talking about the media fund. Ms. Laurando, do you have the number for the media fund? Mr. Pichet has that information. For cable services, internet services, it's 5% for the Canada Media Fund, for other broadcasters, they have mandatory Canadian spending requirements. During the press conference, you mentioned that your bill will ensure that an extra $1 billion would be invested by the big players in the digital field, Netflix and others. How do you come to this calculation? When we look at the bill, we look at the 55 pages of that bill, there's no mention of a percentage that would guarantee that this amount would be there. And when we read different newspaper articles, they talk about $830 million. Those players don't give us the same numbers. How can we have access to this calculation?
Merci.
Thank you. In fact, what we've done and what our colleagues in the department have done is that when you look at the totality of the investment of Canadian broadcasters in terms of percentages, as I was saying earlier, those percentages depend on the kind of business that it is, and it varies between 25 and 45%. And that's of their income that has to be reinvested in Canadian culture. So if we apply that percentage, the 25 to 45 percent, to the digital platforms in Canada, we would arrive at an amount that is an approximation, but that allows us to come to that $830 million, which would be that much more money annually that would be reinvested in Canadian and Quebecois culture. Well, why not have put that directly into the bill rather than giving that responsibility over to the CRTC? That means that for 9 months there won't be any amounts invested. So what prevents you from putting that into the bill proper to ensure that those players would be treated with the same fairness as the current ones? Well, in fact, the bill does provide that digital platforms will have to contribute fairly, as the cable operators do, for example. So why should we ask the regulator to do that? Well, first of all, because it's an independent tribunal of experts. This isn't unique to the broadcasting sector, where the legislator asks the regulator to do that sort of work. We do it in energy sector, for example. The government gives the direction and tables the bill, but the implementation is done by those experts, and it's done in the legal sector as well. And I'd like to add something else that's important, Mr. Reyes. We haven't reviewed the Broadcasting Act. We haven't amended this legislation for 30 years. And if the past is in the indication of the future, it's much easier to amend regulations than to amend legislation. And so I think that over the next 30 years, our habits in terms of consumption of these products and the technologies will greatly change. And so if we have a bill that is very rigid, we risk finding each other, rather ourselves, with the kind of problem we have today. Yes, but in this bill, there's nothing that guarantees the level of Canadian content that you would wish. So in terms of, as Ms. Joly had tabled this agreement with Netflix, she was severely criticized for that because she had done nothing to protect one of the two official languages of the country. So you're putting a great deal of emphasis on racialized communities, LGBTQ community, and Indigenous communities. So what guarantees would Francophones across the country, not just those in Quebec, what assurance do they have that there will be fair content for Francophone productions? Well, there will be obligations in terms of Francophone content, as is the case for the broadcasters at this point in time. And so there are many organizations that don't share your pessimism. The French-Canadian Cultural Association congratulated the minister. ADISC talked about a historic day. The Coalition for Cultural Diversity congratulated the minister as well. And most of these parties offer their support of this bill.
I have to cut in here. That's your time is up. I'm going to have to be a little bit more strict on time, folks. For technical reasons, we're running behind time. Madame Bassett, pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
6 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Mr. Minister. Thank you for being here today, particularly with all of the technical difficulties that we've had. The sports sector had a suffered devastating impacts after COVID, especially in terms of competition. So they have had deficits and revenue losses, but we're talking about recovery. So how can you ensure that the professional and amateur sectors can recover from this? Thank you for the question. There are several things that we have done, and I was talking about the emergency fund earlier. $500 million, $72 million was set aside for the sports sector. And essentially what we did is that we divided that money in two. Half was given to national federations, who in turn handed those monies over to their partners, and the other half was distributed across the provinces in order to help provincial federations and regional federations. We, at the federal level, don't have all of the contacts with those organizations. So we worked with the provinces and territories so that money would be distributed. So if I may, I would like to clarify that normally in federal provincial cases, these funds are distributed on a pro rata basis. But what we tried to do was to keep in place the sports ecosystems in the provinces and territories. So we sent the money out in terms of the numbers of organizations per province. So, for example, Alberta or British Columbia or even Manitoba had a much higher percentage, and Saskatchewan, of these monies than if we had done this on a pro rata basis. So really tried hard to keep the existing ecosystem in place. Of course, there was the relaunching of the Olympics that created all kinds of problems, as you are well aware, for athletes who are supported by federal programs, funding programs. And these are elite athletes. So just in terms of funding, we extended this until the next Olympics. As to say, the support that we offer those athletes and their entourages. Thank you. My second question, I'd like to talk about phase 2 of this emergency fund. It was intended to support organizations that are not normally ones that receive support from Canadian Heritage. So how did the department ensure the participation of these organizations who don't usually receive assistance from you? Thank you for the question. It was a great challenge, because obviously we were quickly made aware of the fact that the department supports from year to year. It's not always the same groups, but I'm sure it's the same thing, whether it's the Canadian Council for the Arts or the Media Fund. But we realized that if we didn't help people that don't normally receive funding, it would be very difficult for these organizations to survive this. So that is why we set aside about 40% of the $500 million envelope for organizations that we don't normally subsidize. And what we did is we carried out an exercise with our partners, and I referred to that earlier, to reach out to these groups. And obviously, we set up a new website, and we had created a simplified application so that those organizations could qualify quickly for the funds and receive that money quickly. So seasonal museums, for example, we don't subsidize them through Canadian Heritage. And so I think that it was a most interesting exercise for us, but it shows also that there remains work to be done in terms of diversity as concerns our ability to reach out to these organizations. I'm not sure what's happening in the room here. Thank you. Have you finished? Thank you. Another question. Phase 2 concerns funding for local media and periodicals. I know that in my riding, independent papers like the Sherbrooke Record can carry on their activities thanks to that assistance. So can you talk to us about how local media are impacted and why this assistance is necessary. Well, media in general, but particularly local media, have been hard hit by the pandemic, essentially because of the drastic reduction in ads. People that normally buy ads in those papers were they themselves facing financial difficulties that were significant. So we reduced a part of the emergency assistance, and what we had set aside was particularly intended for the media and help that specific sector, the local media, survive this crisis. We also took other steps to help. There's an ad campaign that the department has launched on COVID, where the federal government bought ads in local media for the health department, for example, and that was done across the country. And I don't have the figures right in front of me, but there were hundreds of press operations and local radio stations that were able to benefit from that support.
Madame Bessette.
Thank you, Ms. Bessette. The next person is the member for Ile d'Orléans, Charlebois, Madame Desbiens, for 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Minister, Deputy Minister. I'm pleased to speak to you, and I take this opportunity to thank your team, you and your team, Minister, because you worked very hard to maintain the cultural world, and it is not a simple thing to do, and I really want to recognize the tremendous efforts that you've made in this regard. I'd like to speak rather, because earlier you said that you had met with 4,000 people in September and October, and that you saw that there was a level of satisfaction of 77%. When I came home with a report card that said 85%, my father said to me, "What happened to the other 15%?" Now, he was pretty strict, but I know you weren't trying to reach 100%, but the 23% that were not really reached, what are your goals to reach those people in the next stage, which will be critical for them? Well, I agree with you. We can always do better, and we also always aspire to help the greatest number of people, organizations that are cultural and performers and artisans. I can give you an example of the major festivals that we didn't manage to help in phase 1 or phase 2 of the emergency funding. We did not manage to find a program that really would be appropriate. So there's a tremendous variety of large festivals across the country, and we're working on that aspect now. So I hope that we will soon be able to announce something for that regard. So that's certainly one of the sectors that we need to do more, and as rapidly as possible. And I always worry about the artists who are at the very base of the creation, if we lose our large number of our great musicians and other artists because they have to move on to other work to survive, how can we ensure that the money will get to those people, the creators? Well, there are several mechanisms that we put in place to support people. We set up financial mechanisms to support the ecosystem, the organizations, and on the other hand, we can think about salary subsidies. No, I'm talking about salaries. I'll get to the other question in a minute, but the CERB. But for people who, Ms. Laurando, can you tell me, was it 75% who benefited from salary subsidies? I think Stéphane will give us a more specific figure. Stéphane? I think you're on mute, Jean-Stéphane. 75% of organizations. Okay, so that allowed us to ensure that artists and technicians remained working for their organizations. And of course, there's also the CERB, which is about to be replaced. It's almost expired, but there'll be a new economic support. And we also announced that it will be available at least until the middle of next year, because the situation is very uncertain for the coming months. Ms. Laurando, perhaps I'd like to make a link between tourism and culture, because I think that particularly in suburban areas, or perhaps there's a fund that is a fund that was supporting tourism operations in smaller areas, and that helped a great deal in 2008 during that crisis. So do you think this is something that can be set up again very quickly?
That's one of the alternatives that are presently under study for major events. We are reflecting about the possibility of, with our colleagues in the industry, of providing measures that would help these major events and also provide a recovery for tourism. We are in the process of studying these issues, and we are looking at the whole program. Thank you. One last question for the minister. What could give some hope to the artists? We know that the public will not be able to attend events for a while, that the vaccine isn't going to be obtained for a while before everything gets back on the rails, back on track. What do you think can be put in place to help people go and see events? Well, there are long-term types of help aids that can be put in a place like CERB, for example, but right up until the middle of next year. But the situation is evolving so quickly from one province to another, from one moment to another. To announce a 3-year measure when we really don't know what the situation is going to be next week or next month, well, just imagine what's happening for the artists. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
In 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I would like to thank the Minister for joining us. I know it was not easy to get on the call, and certainly there's been some technical challenges for all of us today. So thank you for being patient and taking the time to be here. And also thank you as well for all of the work you have done for the cultural sector over the past 8 months. Like you, I also did some roundtables. As I'm sure you know, Edmonton Strathcona is the heart of the artistic community in Edmonton. We have a number of theaters, a number of festivals that happen within my riding. So I did a roundtable as well. And one of the things that I heard from artists and cultural workers is a deep need in long-term support, knowing that they will not be going back to the theater, knowing that we will not have people in venues for some time. For some time. Did you also hear from cultural workers that a basic income would be one of the key things that they would be looking for going forward?
Thank you for the question. And as I was just telling your colleague, this issue of long-term support has been coming up, and our response to that is the situation evolves so quickly that it's difficult to plan for the long term. But what we've said from the beginning is that we would be there and we would have their backs, and I think we've shown that we have been there, and we will continue to be there to support them until we're back to something that looks like a new normal. So if it takes 6 more months or a year, well, the government will be there, and the Prime Minister has been very clear on that. We won't let them down, and we haven't.
Well, thank you for that, and I would like to echo my colleague as well when she says that, the lack of knowledge of what we're facing obviously affects government, but it affects artists even more. So I would like to just highlight that for her as well, and press you to make sure that we are keeping artists and our cultural workers as up to speed as we possibly can, so that they are not having to deal with this uncomfortable way of not knowing. The other questions I have are around museums. I've spoken to a number of different people that have talked about how museums have been particularly hard hit. But when we look at the estimates, we see that there were decreases in many of the funding for the museums. I'm just wondering why those decreases were in place. And given that there is the COVID-19 pandemic and the challenges that museums are facing, is additional funding possible for this fiscal year? And will the Museum Assistance Program be expanded to provide long-term funding to get through the pandemic? And if so, what's the plan? Those are a lot of questions, sorry.
Yeah. On your first one, you say that the funding has been going down for museum. Can you be more specific?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the estimates that we were given, the Canadian Museum of History, the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, and the Canadian Museum of Nature are seeing decreases of 4.6%, 5.4%, and 7.5% respectively.
Madame Laurendeau, could you? I don't have those numbers in front of me. I mean, what I can tell you is that about 10% of the emergency funding did go to a special museum program, 53 millions. We have also provided additional funding for the national museums, which was announced in August, I believe. But
yeah, in August,
would you please?
Yeah, in August. Two things. Thank you very much for the question. There was, of course, for the National Museum, there was a revenue losses that happened towards the end of the fiscal year. So it was the reason why we reacted outside of the emergency fund, but we provided additional funding to offset that lost revenue until the end of this fiscal year. So it looks like it is, of course, a downward trend with respect to their main estimates, but it got offset by additional funding in the realm of about 20 million, if I'm not mistaken, or 25 million. So we can provide you the exact figures. So that's how the interplay happened between what happened towards the end of the year and what we're offset through something that is like the emergency funding, but is outside the 500 million.
And so going forward, will there be additional funding made available for not just the larger museums, but also smaller museums across the country?
Well, it depends how successful I am in convincing my colleague at Finance that that should be the case, but we're not quite there yet.
Well, please let us know if there's any way that we can help convince your colleague in Finance.
Thank you very much.
We're there for you. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have left?
You have just about a minute.
Wonderful. So I'll ask just a very quick question then. In my writing, I can tell you that the CBC is a deeply loved institution. One of the things that I always found interesting was that every time I saw a Heather McPherson sign, I also saw a CBC sign. Can you explain why CBC Radio Canada has not received additional funding since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic?
I'm also a big fan of the CBC and Radio Canada. I've confessed so publicly before. We are working. The CBC was able to redirect some existing funds to help compensate some of the challenges brought on by COVID-19. We are looking at measures to further help CBC in the coming months.
Thank you. That's all for now. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shields, 5 minutes, please.
Okay, they've got the mic on. I will split my time with Mr. Waugh. So thank you, Mr. Minister, for being here. Appreciate you, and always appreciate your staff. As we met with them earlier, they're fantastic. I'm going to get very specific. To do with the new legislation, you talk about the Broadcasting Act, engagement sessions, engage with Indigenous peoples on how to best support Indigenous storytelling. After the last meeting we had, and I brought this up, and you said the NAC had that piece and had been added to. So I met with the staff there. They were two great people, but they had no money. They had no money, and this was before COVID-19. What I'm talking about is in the sense of, in my area is one of the most phenomenal stories that has been written and performed by Indigenous high school and other students from the high school. It's phenomenal. It's regionally recognized as a great performance, well written, and it really is a great piece. So when you're talking about storytelling, there's an example of storytelling. Last time you told me with the NAC and the staff they had no money, but it's a play that needs to be performed in other places in the country. So you now have this under your new piece called Engage with Indigenous People to support Indigenous storytelling. How are you going to do that?
Well, thank you for the question. As part of the reform of the Broadcasting Act, one of the things that once hopefully the bill is approved by the House, Cabinet will send the CRTC a directive, which will what we want to do is ensure that there's an increased level of funding for Indigenous productions, for Francophone productions, and other equity-seeking group, and since there will be a large increase in the amount of money available for cultural productions in Canada, we're confident that this will happen. Let me give you another example, not specifically related to broadcasting, but I'm also responsible for the implementation of the Indigenous Language Act. When we came into power in 2015, $5 million went to Indigenous languages in Canada. That amount is at $40 million right now. It's going to be north of $50 million next year and at least $115 million. So 14, 15 times what it was in 2015. And obviously storytelling is intrinsically linked to language and culture. So this is another way we're helping and encouraging and making sure that Indigenous peoples in this country can tell their stories.
And I agree with you on this.
Thank you very much. Mr. Waugh, for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome, Minister and staff. Thank you very much. I am going to ask you a question about the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, Mr. Minister, because of funding. Last month, reports emerged of nearly a 10% increase in funding for the CBC in the supplementary estimates. Is that number accurate? And if so, can you tell the committee what really necessitated such a dramatic increase in their budget?
Hélène or Jean-Stéphane can correct me, but I believe there's been no increase in the CBC funding. I believe those media reports were inaccurate, unless I'm misunderstanding the question.
No, yeah. Were they inaccurate then, those media reports?
I think Jean-Stéphane wants to add something.
Okay.
Vous êtes en sourdine, Jean-Stéphane.
Désolé.
Yeah, you're muted, Jean-Stéphane. Sorry.
In the supplementary estimates B, so there's no increases that have come through subs B.
Okay, thank you. The other issue I wanted to bring up tonight was CBC Tandem, the so-called sponsored content. I know it's currently on hold, but it is concerning that a Crown corporation that really is supposed to be providing Canadians with reliable and fact-based data would be selling its credibility now to the highest bidder. Since this is coming from the CBC, many Canadians would consider this being a government-sponsored and approved news. Can you give us some background on this and tell us if the department is doing anything right now? Well, they've suspended it, so is the department doing anything to address CBC Tandem?
I mean, the first thing I need to say is that the CBC is not a government organization. It's a public broadcaster. It's an independent broadcaster and an independent organization, with its own independent board. As Minister of Heritage, I'm not involved in the day-to-day decisions of the CBC. So they make their own internal decisions.
Do you have any thoughts on Tandem? I mean, they seem to be selling this. They do get well over $1 billion a year, and now some of their major former broadcasters are a little upset with CBC Tandem, like Peter Mansbridge and so on. Any thoughts on it? Okay,
very quickly, Minister.
To be totally honest with you, I've been a bit busy this week with the broadcasting bill. I have heard of the story you're talking about. It's not something I've had a chance to look into in depth.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lewis. 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here and all the panelists and guests, and I appreciate your patience tonight. And I just wanted to start by saying on behalf of athletes and artists from coast to coast to coast, thank you for your quick response and supporting a sector of art, of our economy that's been so hard hit. One thing we haven't talked
Voici les éléments dont nous avons encore parlé.
Visual sector in Canada. Sorry, something went wrong there. In Waterloo region and in my riding in Kitchener-Conestoga, writers, directors, actors, production companies, musicians. It's a whole ecosystem of talent, and shows just in my writing alone. Murdoch Mysteries, Anne with an E, Handmaid's Tale, were filmed right here in our region. So I know they also support our local economies when they're here, and they help tell our stories. So you mentioned some short-term compensation. Can you expand on that? You mentioned it went through Telefilm Canada and the Canada Media Fund. Can you tell about how we're supporting the industry there? Thanks.
Yes, and thank you for the question. One issue that was brought forward to us this summer by the sector is the fact that because of the pandemic, they weren't able to get insurance for sets to go back, and without insurance, they couldn't get funding from banks. So we, believe it or not, the government is now in the business of insuring TV and TV production and movie production sets. Who would have thought that this would be possible? But so the government provided a $50 million insurance fund for the audiovisual sector, so these productions can start again in Quebec, Ontario, the Prairies, British Columbia. And the sector was very happy. We did that. We are looking at the possibility of extending it because that's one thing we're looking at, and we are having ongoing conversation with the sector to make sure that this measure is helpful and will continue to be as long as it's needed.
Well, I appreciate that. And that's the sector in arts and all of these sectors here are people that really want to get back to work. So that's the balance. It's people who are just desire to get back to work, but they know they have to do it safely for themselves, for the people around them. So, but, and you can't put a price on this, but those kind of investments and shows, that helps share our culture, share our language, share our stories. You've mentioned that a number of times. I suggest to you or anyone that if you were to ask anyone in the world to name a number of Canadians that on the short list would be artists. So can you tell how this is going to help us by supporting our artists and having those stories out there in our audiovisual and music as well, how that's going to help our position in the world and what people think of Canada?
Well, I mean, we've clearly seen how successful Canadians are on the international scene with our TV production. A number of our shows, Schitt's Creek, Kim's Convenience, in French, District 31, Les Pêcheurs.
In French, we have District 31, Les Pêcheurs.
TV series to be bought by Netflix. We really punch above our weight. And I agree with you. We can't always put a price on that, but that $50 million insurance that we're providing to the audiovisual sector will put 17,000 people back to work. And I can't, and the economic benefit for Canada are in the billions of dollars. I don't have the exact number, but Jean-Stéphane could probably give you that very quickly.
No, I appreciate that. Now, just in my time remaining, I did want to say that I've hosted, as well as a number of people here, hosted a lot of roundtables with artists in Kitchener-Conestoga here, from large organizations to small independent artists. And in typical artist fashion, even though they're struggling, they're always thinking of others. So something that came up a lot at our roundtables was our youth. the mental health particularly, and also how we can keep our youth transitioning into arts and possibly work on a sustainable career when times are tough. So can you explain, like it's basic, but can you explain the importance of wage subsidy in CERB, now the CRB, and how that can support our artists financially so they can help that next generation to become artists, and also support them in the mental health thing? Arts is so important to our young artists.
I think when history books are written about how Canada responded to COVID-19, they will talk about CERB. And they will talk about how, if you look at our G7 partners, Canada has been certainly, if not the most generous country to support Canadians, not just artists, but certainly artists. I mean, if you look at if you put all of the measures together that we've done, either directly or indirectly for the arts and culture sector, the effort by the Canadian federal government has been above $4 billion of support for the sector and counting, because we are announcing new measures. I was talking earlier about the fact that we supported the ecosystem, but we also wanted to support people. And that's what we did with CERB and with the wage subsidy to ensure that those who want to stay in the sector can do that and are supported in these difficult times.
Thank you, Minister. Madame Desbiens, pour 2 minutes.
Madame Desbiens, you have 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I didn't hear, but I believe it's my turn. Yes, thank you. I will continue on the previsibility section. What would you do? I come from the music field. I worked in there. I'm a musician. My partner is working in the lighting system, and we've used food banks before. What do you have to say about this in terms of being able to plan? What we're doing seems to work. We've told artists that we would be there for them, and we didn't abandon them. We've supported them. Compared to our G7 partners, in terms of supports to the arts sector, to artists, Canada might not be the best, but is among the best. Not a week goes by. Well, I've talked to 4,000 people in the sector over the last few months, but every week, at least one person thanks me and thanks the government for what we've done to support people. In Europe and France, there's a status for workers that gives artists a way to get money when times are harder. Money doesn't have to be given in an urgent manner because they already have these programs. What do you think about that? Actually, that's what we've done since the beginning of the pandemic. Without the CERB, these people, what for tomorrow? This is until mid-2021, so it's for a while. We should think about having a permanent funding for people that lose jobs in the cultural sector, as it's done in France. I think it could be a useful thing to do. The pandemic makes us look at things differently. Maybe you've watched the speech from the throne. We've mentioned that we need to review some programs to our social net our safety net might not be still needs to be improved, but we haven't let those people down. You should be able to go further. Thank you, Ms. Desbiens.
McPherson, for 2 minutes, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I find myself agreeing with my colleague from the bloc again that it would be lovely to see a permanent solution to some of these issues. Some of the questions I wanted to ask you about, Minister, and again, thank you for being here, has to do with the National Film Board of Canada. So when I was going through the estimates, I've spoken to a number of people from the NFB, and over the course of the pandemic, there has been, in an explosion in how much people are accessing our digital content. As we know, people are at home, people are utilizing our digital content more and more. However, we do see that there has been a 5.1% decrease this year from last year, from the previous year. Could you talk a little bit about where that decrease came from, how that was decided on, what that means, I guess?
Not in any great level of details, but maybe Hélène can. I mean, the NFB did get an injection of money for their move from the old office to the new office, so that inflated temporarily their budget. I think that's certainly part of what you're seeing, but maybe there's something else. Hélène, can I turn to you, or Jean-Stéphane?
I think you have captured it. It was an injection for the move, and they're reverting back to their regular level of funding. Jean-Stéphane, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding.
You're on mute.
You're still on mute, Jean-Stéphane.
Sorry, I think I'm fighting with the mute button. I apologize. There are fluctuations in some of if you look at main estimates of subs B or subs A, especially with regards to Crown corporations, that doesn't mean that the funding is not stable. Depending of where in the actual financial cycle the money comes in, you can have those adjustments that will show up perhaps in either subs A or subs B. So it's a good question to ask. At the same time, it doesn't actually necessarily mean that the organization didn't get. It's the snapshot in time of this particular, and that's a technical issue. But we can definitely find you the information.
That would be great. Yeah. So I just want to clarify, Monsieur Pichet, that is not that there's not been a cut to the National Film Board except for those funds that went along with the moving of the head office. Is that correct?
What I'm saying is that if there's a reduction in the amount, it's not necessarily due, and probably not due to a reduction in funding. Perhaps that funding came through another funding vehicle, either through subs B or subs A.
And I'd love more information about that. Oh, I'm done. Shoot.
Mr. Waugh, so there's no reflection on your questioning, Ms. McPherson. Mr. Waugh, 5 minutes, please.
I'm going to share some of my time then with Mr. Aitchison, if I can. Minister, one issue, I know the professional leagues did get underway other than the CFL, but I think one league that we maybe overlooked a little bit is the Canadian Hockey League, because so many teams are community owned, Baie-Comeau, Peterborough, Prince Albert, Medicine Hat, so on. Other than wage subsidy, and I don't know if any of them, I would suspect they got wage subsidy or CERB out of that. What are we going to do to these teams? I see Quebec, I think the Quebec government gave them $1 million each recently in the queue, and Ontario's still wondering if they should hit or not when they do, or if they do come back. But what are we going to do with the CHL teams? Because they are, as you know, and many of us know, are the life of the NHL, because and communities. They're more important in communities like Baie-Comeau than they are maybe in Montreal or Toronto. So what can we do for them, or is there anything you've done for them?
That's a very good question. So they would have been eligible to some of the measures we have put forward. We are looking at different things we could do. There are discussions with them about potential future tournament that could happen in the very near future in Canada. To obviously in discussion with PHAC and provincial or regional health authorities to ensure that if we do find ways to have big tournaments, they would be done very safely from a public health perspective. In terms of direct support, I mean, some of the funding you're referring to from the Quebec government is in part the money that the federal government gave to provinces to support their provincial or regional leagues. Jean-Stéphane, I can't I can't remember if we did something specific for the Canadian Hockey League.
I would have to look into it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think we have. I think we assessed it, but I think eventually we haven't done something specific, but we would have to confirm.
Okay.
So we
No,
will get
thanks.
back to you, Mr. Waugh.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Aitchison, your time.
Thank you, Mr. Waugh, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Minister, for being here. I have a little more detailed questions, I guess, and in part, I guess it's about being new. I'm wondering about the difference between what's identified in the list of money given out by the ministry. What's the difference between a contribution and a grant? I noticed specifically there's contributions to the Canada Periodical Fund of almost $2.5 million. And then there's grants to the Canada Periodical Fund of almost $73 million. What's the difference between a contribution and a grant?
I don't have the definition in front of me, but Jean-Stéphane or Hélène, you...
A contribution is something that is framed into a contribution agreement, very similar to, but not identical to, a form of contract with conditions attached to it. Grants tend to be closer to a donation or something that is given with less strings attached. In both cases, they are given for a certain purpose, but there is a little bit more control around a contribution than there is over a grant. So it's really two different mechanisms at the end of the day. One is a little bit more stringent, the other one is a little bit less.
Okay, and so can I assume then that the contributions for the sport support program of almost $180 million and then grants to the athlete assistance program that's a similar kind of situation?
Yes, it is. In the case of the contribution for the sports program, they are by and large done with our provincial partners. So therefore, we want to be a little bit clear as to what are the conditions attached to the expenditure. And with respect to the athletes, those are grants that goes directly to them. And
directly to the athlete themselves.
Exactly. And we don't tell them you have to buy your shoes or you have to do whatever with it.
Thank you. Another quick one. I also noticed, of course, that the Department of Heritage makes grants to each of the provinces to help defray the costs of the lieutenant governors of each. How is that calculated? How is it determined how much each province gets? There doesn't really seem to be a rhyme or reason to it.
I'm really going to turn to Jean-Stéphane for this one.
Jean-Stéphane may want me to take that one.
Oh, well, then I'll turn to you, Hélène.
The difference, you're quite right, actually, that there are differences between one province to another. That being said, though, what the federal government pays is quite small compared to the expenditure of the running of the offices of the lieutenant governor. We basically pay a very small amount, and the rest is paid by the provinces. The amount we pay is based on the actually salary, if I'm not mistaken, of the lieutenant governor themselves, and it's limited to that.
So then Mr. Aitchison, I apologize, your time is up. Mr. Blois for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Minister Guilbeault. It's great to see you. Of course, normally I don't have the pleasure of sitting on this committee, but very pleased to be here today. And as someone that was a former athlete, I was fortunate to be a draft pick of one of those major junior teams that Mr. Waugh was mentioning and played sport and knows it's important to community. My first question would be, in my riding of Kings Hants, sport and sport organizations play a critical role. We have a number of top athletes. I'm not as familiar with the programs that we've rolled out. Can you explain to me some of the ones that are specific to sports and where we put that emphasis and focus?
And Mr. Blois, are you specifically referring to emergency funding or normal ongoing funding?
As it relates to COVID-19, first and foremost, if you want to explain some other elements, by all means.
So of the $500 million of emergency funding we provided to the overall heritage sector, 72 was earmarked for sports, and basically split in half. Half went to national organizations, and the other half was distributed through territories and provinces to support provincial, regional organizations with which normally Canadian Heritage or the federal government doesn't really have a relationship with. And one thing that was very helpful for provinces with smaller population is that we allocated that money not based on population, but based on a number of organizations in the province or the territory. So proportionally, Alberta and Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Yukon got a larger share of that 30, it was roughly $35–36 million than they would have normally have, because what we were trying to do was really trying to keep the ecosystem, the sports ecosystem in place for especially in smaller communities.
I have a rural riding, so we have a lot of smaller communities where events, festivals, organizations that put on types of community gathering events, I'll say, those are really important to our culture, to our ability to bring communities together. That's been more difficult. I understand that I think your department in some cases was able to recognize and honor some of those existing agreements, contribution agreements or grants. Can you speak a little bit about what we've done to try to support those organizations that already had relationships with Canadian Heritage?
Yes, thank you. Actually, we honored all of our agreements, with perhaps a few exceptions. But basically, when COVID hit, in speaking with the department, the decision we took is that we would honor agreements we had with organizations, whether or not the events or the what was supposed to be funded for happen or not. If you were doing a music tour, a summer festival, a theater competition, if it was postponed or canceled, we told the organization, keep the money and use it wisely, but there was no way we were going to pull that money, and those organizations needed the funding. So we were very flexible. We were also very flexible with the emergency funding, so it wasn't attached to specific activities. It was really there to try and help organizations. So if you were already a recipient of Canadian Heritage or Canada Council for the Arts or Telefilm support, you got almost automatically up to a 25% top up of what you'd previously received from the federal government. The funding structure was a bit different for organizations that do not normally receive funding from the federal government, but that, in a nutshell, that's how we did it.
I want to be mindful of my time. And the last thing I would say is there has been discussion here today about the importance of CBC and the role that it plays. Being in Nova Scotia, we're no different in terms of that's importance. And you mentioned it and you made very clear that you're the minister responsible, but you're not involved in the day-to-day activities of CBC. We recently had a production cut in Halifax that's going to impact programming like Land and Sea, and also This Hour has 22 minutes. And I, from one parliamentarian to the other, I know you don't control CBC's operations, but the next time you're speaking with some of the senior leadership of CBC, I hope you'll enforce the importance of what the regionality means to CBC in Atlantic Canada and in Nova Scotia.
I can't tell them what to do, but I do talk to them from time to time.
Would appreciate just passing that word on. And again, I know you don't interfere, but it's just as the minister responsible, that message would be lovely. Thank you so much.
Your message has been heard.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blois. I have one final question. Is Mr. Aitchison, is he still there? Right.
Yeah, I can.
Oh, there he is. Yes.
Him. Yeah.
Go ahead. You can pick up where you left off a short time ago.
I kind of want to move on to a new topic again. It may not even be your department, but they do perform somewhat of a cultural role in our society, and it's actually of summer camps. There's over 400 summer camps across Canada. And I think, they're culturally significant for young people. It covers a lot of areas that your ministry does, including sport. And I'm wondering if there's been any discussion amongst your ministry or other folks in your government about some kind of supports within the context of all these other programs to support summer camps across Canada.
I don't have the answer to that question, but and I don't know if Hélène or Jean-Stéphane do. If we don't, we can certainly find that answer and provide it to you.
We don't have programs specifically for summer camps, but we have within Canadian Heritage some programming for youth, which from time to time, depending on projects, could actually spill over summer program. But we could look at providing you a more complete answer. But specifically, we don't have a summer camp program. But we can give you information of what we do through our youth program. But I would have to get back to you in writing.
Okay, so there may be summer camps may be able to apply to specific programs for specific programs they're offering. For example, is that what you're suggesting?
Well, for example, the Canada Youth Program, summer camps would be eligible to that. So that's a clear example. But in terms of heritage per se, we, as Hélène was saying, we don't have programs to support summer camps. There may be instances under the youth branch of the department where we could do that, but maybe in another ministry, tourism, or perhaps there's something. So we would have to look into it.
Okay, thank you.
There is some time left, Mr. Reyes. I see your hand is up. Would you like to take the remaining 2 minutes?
I perhaps won't take the whole 2 minutes if someone else wants to speak, but I was looking for a clarification. One of the questions I asked earlier, I was asking in terms of the calculation of the $830 million and the figures you gave out. I said approximately $1 billion. Okay, I'm sorry. But what I was asking earlier was, would it be possible to have access to the formula you used to talk about traditional media versus other ones, and wonder if we could have access to that data? Well, yes, I think Jean-Stéphane can send you that information. And if possible, I'd like to see what the calculation is for the media fund as well. I think that is public information. It would help us to understand the dynamic between traditional media and digital media and how you deal with that. Thank you. Yes, we'd be pleased to show you how we came to those figures. Thank you. I'm finished, Mr. Chairman, if anyone else has a little time.
You've got about 40 seconds. Go for it.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Minister, I think we still have $18 million on the grants that you could, or the out of the 500 million that came out. So where's that going, and will it be distributed before the end of the year?
I can't remember if it's 15 or 18, but
okay.
Ballpark, yes. And we are looking at how this money could quickly be reallocated or invested where, trust me, we're not leaving this on the table.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Mr. Minister, you are free to go. Thank you very much. And sorry about the technical glitches at the very beginning. Thank you for your extended time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a nice.
Thank you.
Bonne soirée.
Indeed.
Have a nice evening.
Because this is the time where we have with the officials. With your indulgence, I'd like to do it this way, since we started late and it's much later now than we anticipated. Instead of doing this in a formal manner down the list, may I propose that if anybody has any specific questions, it's like a lightning round. Anybody has a specific question, please raise your hand and we'll deal with it. It doesn't have to be, linked in parties. Just if you have any questions that you'd like for the officials that you didn't get answered. I see Mr. Reyes, and I'll go from the list that we see here, and then we'll go from the floor back to the list. We'll try to make this as short as we can. We don't have a lot of time. So Mr. Reyes, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Now, in terms of the assistance that was given to various organizations, I'd like to know, for the Country and Music Festival, for example, small events, tiny museums that we have in our region, they don't get funding from Canadian Heritage. on an annual basis. So how do these organizations that don't have any income other than beer sales and admission tickets, how can they get in touch to get access to some of that 20% that they may be able to get? Because we as members of parliament never received that information so that we can in turn hand it off to them. Well, in the case of small museums, we had set aside a good amount of money during phase 2. We had set up a portal that people could apply through. So they could apply electronically. And we also did a great deal of outreach with associations, local associations, to give information to say that amounts were available to them. Well, if I may, in phase 2, if there was monies, it would be nice if all 338 MPs had access to the information. We are in a great position to get this information through to them because they don't have permanent staff. They don't have the resources to do this quickly. And you have access to 338 ambassadors that adore their regions, and we're the best ambassadors in the world. So I invite you to use our services. There aren't very many departments that do that, despite our access to these people.
Nos petits événements, surtout en région.
Je vous remercie de
Thank you for your suggestion. I think it's something that certainly we will be able to consider. We'll take that into account in the future. We'll try to reach out to partners who are not our usual partners. Thank you.
Long. It's very informal at this point. Again, I remind you, if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand if you're virtual, please virtually raise your hand. Tom, is there anybody in the room right now that would like to ask?
Yes, sir. I believe Mr. Shields and Ms. McPherson have both raised their hands.
Okay, let's go with Ms. McPherson first.
Actually, Mr. Shields did, in fact, raise his hand first, so I would defer to...
Okay,
I'll be quick. What I would like to know is the amount of money that went to advertising in weekly newspapers in Canada. The amount of money spent on advertising, to print advertising out of Heritage. Not to support under any other program other than the amount of money that was paid to weekly advertising in their print paper.
Can I do a really hot pursuit on this? In that was going to be my question, except I also wanted it added to how much was spent on Facebook ads, if I could.
Okay. Yep. So just so their officials there, great. The weeklies and the Facebook ads. Go ahead to our officials.
And you mean by Canadian Heritage per se?
Correct.
Correct. I would have to get back to you as to whether or not we have paid any advertisement because we don't advertise a lot. So I would have to get back to you. I cannot give you that answer directly unless Eric or Jean-Stéphane knows.
Under the Canadian Media Fund, you fund under the Canadian Media Fund, and you fund them. What I need to know is how much money was spent by the federal government in print ads and weekly papers.
And Facebook.
And then the other side of it is how much digital.
Yeah, just to be clear, the Canadian Heritage is not the conduit for federal advertising. It's PSPC who is responsible for that function. In terms of us as a department using ads, that's something that we would have to look into. But we don't manage federal advertisement in general. This is not in the purview of the Department of Canadian.
Under Heritage, then, can we get the print and digital under Heritage?
Thanks. I'm going to have to ask. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Shields. I'm going to have to draw that part to a close. Folks, we're running overtime in a major way for reasons that are obvious from the beginning, but we still have to vote on these particular measures, both in the mains and the subs. Now, with your consent, and I mean unanimous consent, I can group all of these together. There are several votes here. It will take some time. However, we can break this up into three things. Number one, an overall vote on the main estimates and then a second vote on the supplementaries, supplementary Bs, and then a third vote to refer to the House. But I need unanimous consent to do that. And in the virtual world, of course, we have to do this by dissension. Does any, Mr. Pichet, I think you're trying to...
May I make an adjustment to something I say because it relates directly to the vote you want to take? Because I got a question about CBC adjustment in their budget. There was an adjustment in the CBC budget in subs B due to the deferral of the Tokyo Olympics and for the TV rights. So we can send you information on this, but someone asked a question earlier and I didn't have the information right in hand when I answered. So there was a budgetary adjustment to push money to out years because the games have been postponed.
Okay, merci beaucoup, monsieur. Okay, any dissension on doing this by grouping the votes to get together? Seeing none, although my computer just froze. Is everybody with me?
We are still with you.
Okay, sorry, I'm...
No dissension in the room, sir. No dissension on the screen.
Thank you, because all of you on my screen have frozen in time. That's no reflection on you whatsoever. But I'm just going to proceed. I'm assuming you can hear me. So let's go through this. Let's talk about votes on the mains. Can you hear me now?
We can still hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, shall all the votes on the main estimates carry?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, carried. Now let's go on to the supplementaries. Supplementary B. Shall the votes carry?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Third, final vote. Shall I report the votes on the supplementary estimates? Sorry, the main estimates to the House.
Yes.
Yes.
And shall I report to the votes on the supplementary estimates B also to the House?
Yes.
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 Thank you so much. That draws us to a real conclusion. That is it. That is all. C'est tout. Merci bien.
Thank you all very much. You're all very kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you to the witnesses. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chair.